Hi everybody, I am Professor Panjal Narsaya. Welcome to today's lecture on Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. The objectives of this lesson are as follows. This lesson is meant to understand the role, powers of Prime Minister and his functions in public administration. To know the roles played by Council of Ministers, to understand the duties of Cabinet committees. The office of the Prime Minister occupies a prominent place in the Indian administrative system. The entire Indian administrative system is focused around him. The Constitution does not explain the real position of the Prime Minister, as all the executive powers of the Union have been assigned to the President, who is to use them according to the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is described as the keystone of the Cabinet arch, primus inter pares, that is first among the equals, by Lord Morley. Lord William Werner Harcourt described the Prime Minister as interstella luna minoris, that means moon among lesser stars, etc. Ramsay Moore described the Prime Minister as the steersman of the steering ship of the state. Article 75(1) of the Indian Constitution says that the Prime Minister shall be appointed by the President and the other ministers are appointed by the President on the advice of the Prime Minister. This is a formality. The President's choice in appointing the Prime Minister in actual practice is limited to appointing the majority party leader in Parliament, that is Lok Sabha, as the Prime Minister. The President is bound to appoint a person as the Prime Minister in whom the Lok Sabha has confidence. Otherwise, the Union government may fall any time, thereby plugging the country into political instability. But the President is to exercise his discretion when no political party has absolute majority in the Lok Sabha. Other ministers in the Council of Ministers are also appointed by the President on the advice of the Prime Minister. But in appointment of the ministers, the President cannot exercise his discretionary powers. There is no fixed term for Prime Minister of India. Dismissal of Prime Minister. The Constitution bestowed the power of dismissal of Prime Minister in the hands of President of India. Normally, no Prime Minister is dismissed by the President. It has not happened in Indian political system till now. Normal practice is that the Prime Minister resigns when he realizes that he has lost the confidence of the Lok Sabha. This was done by Morarji Desai and Charan Singh in 1979, Chandrasekhar in 1991 and A.B. Vajpayee in 1996. V.P. Singh and Deve Gowda resigned after being defeated in the Lok Sabha. A.B. Vajpayee also resigned after his defeat in Lok Sabha by one vote in 1999. The powers and functions of the Prime Minister can be studied under the following heads: Prime Minister and Council of Ministers. The first function of the Prime Minister is the formation of ministry. He has to suggest the names of persons who can be appointed as ministers by the President. After the completion of this exercise, the Prime Minister allocates different portfolios among the ministers. The Prime Minister enjoys discretion in allocating portfolios to the ministers. He is empowered to reshuffle the ministry to boost the ministers whom he does not like or who are not up to the mark, or to upgrade the deserving ministers or to induct new ministers. He can ask a minister to resign in case of difference of opinion, or he can advise the president to dismiss a minister. An analysis of the formation of ministers during the last 6 decades clearly indicates that the Prime Minister keeps in mind certain considerations like region, community, caste, and group representations apart from providing for talent. In the selection and allocation of portfolios, it largely depends on his hold over the party. The Prime Minister gives life to the Council of Ministers. As the leader of the Council of Ministers, he presides over its meetings. He is also the presiding officer of the meetings of the Cabinet, which is a smaller body and takes all policy decisions. The Cabinet functions under the leadership of the Prime Minister. The agenda is prepared by him. The Prime Minister ensures coordination between the departments, and he has a right to supervise over the administrative departments. He guides, directs, and controls their activities. He is the arbitrator in case of conflict between the two or more ministries or departments. Leader of the House. The Prime Minister is the leader of the Lok Sabha. As such, he advises the President with regard to summoning and proroguing the House. The agenda of the meeting is prepared by the Speaker in consultation with the Prime Minister. As a leader of the House, he announces the major policy decisions of the government. As long as he is the leader of the majority party, his words are the policies of the government. The Prime Minister helps the ministers in answering the questions posed by members of the House during question hour. He comes face to face with the opposition parties during the question hour. Further, the Prime Minister helps the Speaker in the maintenance of discipline of the House. He also plays an important role in the formation of various committees of the Parliament. The most important power of the Prime Minister with regard to Parliament is to recommend dissolution of Lok Sabha. This is a power by which the Prime Minister controls even the opposition. Legislation and administration. The Prime Minister is also an integral part of the legislation in the Parliament. He decides what type of legislative measures are needed for checking administrative lacunae and that how far these are avoidable. He accordingly advises his colleagues in the Cabinet to bring forward legislative measures. Without his consent, no bill can be introduced in the Lok Sabha. He also guides the bills through various stages in the House. Prime Minister possesses such a towering personality that there is no aspect of nation's administrative life which remains out of his reach and or influence. His presence is everywhere, felt, and every administrative organ looks forward to him for his guidance. Chief link between President and Cabinet. The Prime Minister is the main channel between the President and the Cabinet. Article 7(8) of the Indian Constitution specifies that the Prime Minister is to act as a link between President and the Council of Ministers. As such, it is the responsibility of the Prime Minister to inform the President about all decisions of the Cabinet. Whenever he makes foreign trips, he should apprise the President about the outcome of the discussions held with foreign dignitaries. It is the official duty of the Prime Minister to be the chief constitutional advisor to the President. The Prime Minister advises the President with regard to the appointment of important officials such as the Comptroller and Auditor General, Chairman and members of UPSC, parliamentary government is outwardly a party government. It is the party that wins at the polls, forms the government, and it is the person elected by the majority party as its leader who is invited to form the government. The Prime Minister thus owes his office to the party support and depends for the tenure of his office on such continued support. The Prime Minister should try to see it that the ministers, legislators, and the members of his party in carrying out the policies of the government in a decent manner. He can use his official status and authority to keep the rank and file in discipline and in check. The success of the Prime Minister will depend upon his hold in the party. He should maintain cordial relations with the key important functionaries of the party. Other powers and functions of the Prime Minister are as follows. He is the chairman of the National Integration Council and Interstate Council. He plays a significant role in shaping the foreign policy of the country. He is the chief spokesman of the Union government. He is the crisis manager in chief at the political level during emergencies. As a leader of the nation, he meets various sections of people in different states and receives memoranda from them regarding their problems and so on. He is the leader of the party in power. He is executive head of the services, Council of Ministers. As the Constitution of India provides for a parliamentary system of government, modelled on the British pattern, the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister, it is the real executive authority in our politico-administrative system. Composition. The Council of Ministers consists of three categories of ministers, namely Cabinet Ministers, Ministers of State, and Deputy Ministers. The difference between them lies in their respective ranks, emoluments, and political importance. At the top of all these ministers stands the Prime Minister, supreme governing authority in our country. Cabinet Ministers. The Cabinet is a small body consisting of 15 to 18 members. They are the senior-most members of the Council of Ministers and the party. The Cabinet Ministers head the important ministries of the central government like Home, Defence, Finance, and External Affairs, etc. The Cabinet meets under the chairmanship of Prime Minister to discuss about the formulation of important policies. The members of the Cabinet play an important role in deciding policies. Thus, their responsibilities extend over the entire gamut of central government. Ministers of State. The Ministers of State can either be given independent charge of ministries, departments, or can be attached to Cabinet Ministers. In case of attachment, they may either be given the charge of departments of the ministries headed by the Cabinet Ministers or allocated specific items of work related to the ministries headed by Cabinet Ministers. In both the cases, they work under the supervision and guidance as well as under the overall charge and responsibility of the Cabinet Ministers. In case of independent charge, they perform the same functions and exercise the same powers in relation to their ministries or departments as Cabinet Ministers do. However, they are not members of the Cabinet and do not attend the cabinet meetings unless specially invited when something related to their ministries or departments are considered by the cabinet. In 1952, the Minister of State was given the new designation of Minister of Cabinet rank, but in 1957, the earliest designation was restored. Next in rank are the deputy ministers. They are junior ministers in the hierarchy. They are all ministers within the definition of the Constitution. They are not given independent charge or ministries or departments. They are attached to the cabinet ministers or ministers of state and assist them in their administrative, political and parliamentary duties. They are not members of the cabinet and do not attend the cabinet meetings. At the time, the Council of Ministers may also include a deputy prime minister. Thus, Sardar Patel in the Nehru's ministry, Morarji Desai in the Indira Gandhi's ministry, Charan Singh in the Morarji Desai's ministry, Devi Lal, VP Singh's ministry, and L.K. Advani in the A.B. Vajpayee's ministry served as deputy prime ministers. The deputy prime ministers are appointed mostly for political reasons. The Constitution provides that there shall be a council of ministers to aid and advise the President in the exercise of his functions. But in practice, it is the Council of Ministers which does everything which the President is supposed to do under the Constitution. And thus, the powers and functions which are attributed to the President are in reality the powers and functions of the Council of Ministers. The important functions of the Council of Ministers are policy making. The Council of Ministers formulate the policy of the country for its political and economic administration. The ministry also decides the foreign policy of the country. It is responsible to decide the policy of the state for the maintenance of internal peace and order and for increasing the standard of living of the people. Administration. The ministry is solely responsible for the administration of the country. It is in accordance with the principles laid down by the Council of Ministers that the administration is run by the civil servants, but the ultimate responsibility is that of the ministers. They are responsible to the Parliament for their work of the department entrusted to them. The members of the Parliament have the right to ask questions concerning the administration of the country, and in their own interest, the ministers are expected to give satisfactory replies. Legislative functions. The ministry is the main steering wheel of the Parliament and it introduces almost all the important bills. Bills introduced by private members of the Parliament have a little chance of passage without the support of the Parliament. It is sent to the President for his assent, on getting which it becomes a law. Budget preparation. The budget is also prepared and introduced in the Parliament by the Cabinet. The Finance Minister prepares the budget in consultation with the other ministers. After the introduction of the budget in the Parliament, the different ministers present their respective demands. The Parliament is free either to accept or reject the demands. Rejection of the demand would tantamount to the lack of confidence in the ministry. But normally, such a situation would never arise as the government has the support of the majority in the Lok Sabha. The Cabinet plays an important role in Indian administrative system as detailed below. It is the highest decision-making authority in our politico-administrative system. It is the chief policy formulating body of the central government. It is the supreme executive authority of the central government. It is the chief coordinator of central administration. It is an advisory body to the president and its advice is binding on him. It is chief crisis manager and thus deals with all emergency situations. It deals with all major legislative and financial matters. It exercises control over higher appointments like constitutional authorities and senior secretariat administrators. It deals with all foreign policies and foreign affairs. In short, the cabinet not only executes the policies but also provides leadership to the legislature during legislation. It is thus the link that joins and the buckle that fastens the administrative and the legislative arms of the government. Cabinet committees. Since the cabinet is to run the whole administration, it is very essential that it should work on scientific lines. There should be a vigilant cabinet to check unnecessary delays in implementing decisions of the cabinet. For this, the cabinet works through the committees. It is felt that by setting up committees, the workload on the cabinet on the whole will decrease and the cabinet will then devote more time to important work. The system will provide continuous coordination and many affairs are settled at cabinet committee level and not allowed to go to the cabinet level. The number of cabinet committees has been changing from time to time. As on today, there are 13 cabinet committees. They are number 1, Political Affairs Committee, number 2, Parliamentary Affairs Committee, number 3, Appointments Committee, number 4, Accommodation Committee, number 5, Economic Affairs Committee, Committee on Prices, Infrastructure, Trade and Investment, Drug Abuse Control Committee, Natural Affairs Committee, Foreign Investment Committee, Expenditure Committee, Food and Agriculture Committee. Among these, the most powerful committee is Political Affairs Committee, which consists of senior most ministers. It functions as a super cabinet in providing direction to the government. The strength of these cabinet committees is not fixed. In many cases, Finance Minister, Home Minister and some ministers of the cabinet rank are its members. Prime Minister is member on many committees. In fact, Prime Minister, Defence Minister, Home Minister and Finance Minister dominate the whole show and help the committees in deciding their recommendations. As the Constitution of India provides for parliamentary form of government, wherein the executive authority is vested in the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister, Cabinet is the prime mover of political action and the core of Indian political system. It decides all policy matters of national governance. The cabinet ministers are senior most ministers of the council and certainly the most influential. The cabinet functions through several committees such as political, economic and price committees. Among these, the political committee is most powerful.